Hey everyone, Jim Fitzpatrick. Thanks so much for joining me on another edition of CBT Now, right here at the CBT Automotive Network. In May, we saw a shift in U.S. auto sales. To break down the latest trends in inventory pricing and markdowns, we're joined today by Kerri, who is the Chief Marketing Officer at LotLinx, to take a closer look at LotLinx's May VIN report. Kerri, thank you so much for joining us on the show. Very much appreciate you taking the time with us. And so the report highlights May as a pivotal, kind of a transition month with sales slowing down. What factors contributed most to the slowdown?
Well, I think we've all heard a lot in the news. I think we're witnessing a tipping point absolutely in the market with the tariffs coming out and being announced in late March, early April. We saw this
Yeah.
sales rush, because of the tariffs
Yep.
in April. Consumers were rushing to buy vehicles before pricing rose. And so that pull ahead demand has been exhausted. And as a result, we're seeing sales are certainly declining or decelerating, I should say,
Yeah.
in May. Consumers are going from what was a want-based shopping to now purely need-based for the consumers that are
Yeah.
in the market. We have a lot of consumer uncertainty around the political and economic conditions that are
Hmm.
happening right now. And a lot of buyers are on the sidelines, right? They're kind of waiting to see. We have a lot of buyers also that are impacted by affordability, which is a major challenge right now with
Yeah.
interest rates and
Yeah.
vehicle pricing. So I think we have a lot of headwinds ahead, and ongoing tariff uncertainty could lead to higher prices and additional slowdowns in sales. So there's
Yeah.
there's a lot ahead of us.
Yeah. How will these factors, continue to shape the market in coming months? Well, all of those same things still exist today, but how do you think the future will look?
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at things on a week by week
Yeah.
basis.
Yeah.
And so we certainly will see additional impact of the tariffs, particularly if they actually come into reality. We're hearing what the plans are, but what will really happen, I think, is yet to be seen. I think, affordability is a really important topic
Yeah.
to talk about now, but beyond just the tariffs. You're looking at elevated interest rates. Transactional prices are at the highest levels, and so
Yeah.
what you're seeing is, from a consumer standpoint, they're experiencing sticker shock. I think the average new vehicle price was around $44,000. That's about 30% higher than pre-pandemic levels. And
That's right.
so, we know when we look at just LotLinx data that cars under 45,000 move 10 days faster than cars above 45,000. And so this is going to impact the days to sale.
Yeah. Sure.
We know, monthly interest rates are at a high level, with hovering around 7 to 9%. So,
Yeah.
the monthly payment are at record highs right now. $750 and higher per month. And so, we don't see the environment changing. Where it's going to be more uncertainty, more shoppers priced out of the market right now,
Hmm.
and postponing their purchases or having to move to used or lower trim levels just to make it work. And then
Yeah.
that varies by segment level.
Yeah. Yeah. There's no question. And the interest rates, as you mentioned, are really wreaking havoc on dealers as well, consumers. That something's got to change there because these elevated numbers across the board, these transaction prices, as you said, over $44,000. Where is all of this headed? Right? I mean, the data shows a decrease in new vehicle carryover month to month, but an increase year over year. What does this suggest about the current supply, the supply demand balance between new vehicles and I mean, it's crazy.
It's an insane time. And, I think we've all remembered different periods with COVID, but this is very different than even the COVID period. You asked about the new vehicle carryover. There was an artificial decrease in new vehicle carryover rate in May, in particular, once again related to this tariff sales rush that happened in April. So manufacturers who had more inventory available at that time benefited from that.
Right.
However, we expect a rebound in carryover risk in the next few quarters because demand is going to soften, and tariff prices, tariffs could push the prices up even higher.
Yeah.
And so dealers are going to have to be really strategic on managing their new car inventory, making sure they're as lean as possible so that
Sure.
carryover doesn't balloon. And then, at LotLinx, we're all about, this VIN level segment specific look at your inventory management. And I think that's going to be really important. The devil's in the details
Yeah.
and really paying attention to demand at a VIN level, a segment level on the new car side, to avoid over ordering on segments that are soft.
Right, right, right. And you guys at LotLinx do such an incredible job on that in literally pushing the money to the cars that need the marketing and the advertising versus the ones
Yes.
that you're going to sell in 3 days, or less, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when we think about how we manage inventory, a lot of times we're making our reactions off of gut or what's happening today. But at LotLinx, we're very much about looking at the data in real time, looking at really predictive insights and
Yeah,
what's going to happen, and then making those decisions at a VIN level.
sure.
Because oftentimes we might end up discounting more than we need to,
Yeah.
and we could have moved that car without discounting, or maybe we're not price competitive enough. And the data doesn't lie. The data should be driving those decisions. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Let's talk about used cars here a little bit. The used vehicle aged inventory increased both month over month and year over year, and the percentage of used vehicles sold with a markdown also rose. What implications does that have in the used car market as we move forward?
Yeah, once again, going back to tariffs, you're going to hear me say that on probably every question.
Yeah,
But the tariff threats drove consumers to new cars, right? During this push, for consumers to get their cars before prices increased, which negatively impacted the demand for used cars. So aging has become even more of a concern than ever. You combine that with the affordability concerns of consumers having trouble getting finance, which would really impact the used car side, right? You don't have the ability to lease, for example, on the used car side.
right,
And so,
right.
we anticipate that this is going to be a larger issue as we move forward, as there's more economic
Hmm.
uncertainty. Now, on the opposite end, if consumers have trouble getting financed on the new car side or even affording a new car, that could push more shopping and demand towards the used car side. But consumers are going to be more price sensitive than ever.
Yeah,
You're going to have your consumers that are credit challenged that could only buy a used car, or you're going to have consumers that are in the middle of the income bracket that might have to sacrifice a new car and move down to a used car. And so it's just going to be a different consumer in terms of their price sensitivity. It'll be
sure.
critical for dealers to really tune in to consumer behavior, because how you're acquiring cars, the types of cars you're acquiring are going to be really important. And what worked, 6 months ago, or what are the hot cars, are going to change,
Yeah,
right? With consumers being really concerned about price, that could change the segments they're shopping for,
yep.
and just their mindset in general. And so once again, we're really focused on helping our dealers understand that, and then putting the right efforts from a pricing standpoint, a merchandising standpoint,
Hmm.
and most importantly, promotional, right? Like making sure that VIN has the right amount of promotional budget behind it and is in front
Right.
of the right customer.
Yeah, yeah, very, very good point. With
Yeah.
ongoing tariff uncertainty out there, how crucial is data-driven decision making, for dealers in this environment right now? And what types of data should they be prioritizing or to optimize inventory and pricing strategies? I think you mentioned a few, but drill down on
Yeah.
that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think overall in this market, we have to lead with strategy and not just hope.
Yeah,
We cannot lead and rely on what worked in the past, or we have a lot of experienced managers in this industry, and they know they have a lot of instinct that they use to
yeah,
make decisions as it relates to their inventory. Like that's out right now because
yeah.
we're working on a week to week basis. When you ask me what's going to happen in the future, that's kind of challenging to answer in this environment. It's like what's going to happen next week, right? With this ever changing
That's
political
right.
economic environment we're in. And so I think that's exasperated by what we've talked about earlier, the affordability concerns,
Yeah.
changing consumer demand. And so, LotLinx, we're working with our dealers to really help them make these data-driven decisions,
Yeah.
to really pay attention to days to sell, to discounting, what's happening in the market now. But more importantly, we're about the predictive insights on what's going to happen in the future.
Yeah.
Because what we don't want to do is be reactive for every week. And so we're in this position now where the car's been sitting for a long time. What we want to do is let's price right from day one
Yeah.
based on what the predictive insights are telling us. I think the second part, in terms of what data we need to look at, there is a lot of pricing insights out there in the market. I think what sets LotLinx apart is also understanding the consumer demand and how consumers are behaving.
Mm-hmm.
And we've talked a lot about that, right? They're shifting from segments because of
Yeah.
affordability
Oh,
concerns.
yeah, for
They're
sure.
shifting,
Yep.
right, from new to used.
Yeah.
And so being on top of how consumers are reacting in this environment is really critical. Understanding that demand, because we want to make sure that we have the right strategy at a VIN level, and the demand on that particular VIN is really important. So we've worked with our dealers to help them understand that, and then really to turn that data insight into action from a pricing, from a merchandising,
Mm-hmm.
and then obviously from a promotional level as well.
Yeah, yeah, and LotLinx has been doing that for many years, and I think
Yeah.
that's your key differentiator out there across all of the platforms that dealers have to choose from. LotLinx has done just an incredible job of placing that money on the right car at the right time, when the market is there. And so thanks so much for stopping by. Really appreciate it. Kerri Wise, Chief Marketing Officer at LotLinx. Thank you so much for joining us here at CBT News. It's always great catching up with you. I know that your insights will be shared with dealers, and they will very much appreciate you joining us on the show. So thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jim.
Thanks.